Hello everyone, today is Monday, November 2nd. As always, I'm your host for Collectibles and Coffee, Edward Nguyen. Today, Menagerie Monday, kind of a mix of topics to go through. There's a fair amount to cover, so today I think the majority of things we'll want to be focusing on. Commander Legends previews. It's been a few days since we've done our last review on it. There's been a bunch more cards spoiled over the weekend. They slowly trickled in, some more today. We won't go through every single spoiler. More or less, we'll just be talking about the set as a whole. We'll kind of zoom in on a few specific cards and discuss what are possible good specs and where we should be spending our money with this set. We'll kind of go through my mail. Got some interesting things. A lot of them non-Magic, non-Pokemon related, interestingly enough. So just kind of go through, talk about some of the things I do buy and sell. Just to really show people that there is a lot out there. There are a lot of ways to make money. There are a lot of things. There are a lot of markets. There are a lot of just things in general that you can easily spend money on and in theory make some money. Having knowledge, having the know-how, knowing these things that you do want to go out and buy does help. So we'll kind of be going through those, just talk about them very briefly. And then lastly, in light of kind of everything that's happening right now, wherever you are in the world, we'll kind of look at a lot of real world phenomena, especially with the elections coming up tomorrow. That is really on the forefront of people's mind. It is going to change the market. This is something that we do want to be aware of. Being able to understand what's going on and then being able to react appropriately is going to give you an edge. So we'll go through there. We'll kind of talk about some of the things that happened. We'll look at some of the past events that have happened and see how we can tie it all together, see what we can do to get an edge going forward, especially with the year rounding out. It is November. There's 2 months left in 2020. We do expect some pretty turbulent times coming up. So we'll look at that and see what we can do. So to start off, Commander Legends previews. I think the card that really has garnered the most attention, the one that people have really been talking about, have been going back and forth, it's created the most debate, is no doubt Jeweled Lotus. For anyone who hasn't seen it, it is essentially Black Lotus, with the exception that the mana produced from it can only be used to cast your commander. Nothing else. No abilities of your commander, only be used to cast your commander. And this is one of the cards that obviously has ignited a lot of debate. A lot of people have had very strong opinions about it. A lot of people have talked about this card in all capacities, in terms about how powerful it is, how it's going to do unfun things to EDH. A lot of people think that this is an appropriate card for EDH, yada yada. Wherever you will fall on that, it is important to note that this is going to be probably one of the most expensive cards in the set. Looking at it right now, I had a chance to look on Card Kingdom. TCG Player, we're looking at about $125, $150 for this card. This is where it seems to be pre-selling. It is Mythic, so it does have the extended alternate art variant. That one does seem to be considerably more. This is way too early. These numbers, a lot of these times, these numbers are placeholders. That is really the nature of pre-ordering. It is important to note that a lot of these places, they simply want to put a number into their system, just have it live and cataloged. So as new cards are coming out, they can just immediately have these going out for pre-orders. A lot of the times these numbers don't really mean anything. That simply just means that the first people who are there, they set the price. It does feel arbitrary. It does feel made up. It is unlikely to hold, as we generally know is the case with pre-orders. So I would not pre-order right now, regardless of what your feelings are on this card. If you're a player, again, regardless of how you feel about this card, how it's going to impact play, what it's going to do to EDH, what your group feels about it, are you going to ban it, whatever you feel. If you are going to buy this card, hold off on buying it. Do not buy right now. This is something that invariably will go down in the future as more and more people start to put their pre-orders up. Usually a lot of sellers, they do wait until there is a full spoiler available before they really start pricing cards, simply because there are retailers out there, they don't really want to deal with pre-orders until they have the full set. Once TCG Player has a full set available, once it's all up on their catalog and uploaded to their database and you can see everything, that's when people really start putting in pre-orders and having prices on everything. Until then, these numbers, very, very arbitrary, very made up. Don't follow them. Don't really get caught up in the hype. More people will start listing. Prices will come down. That being said, I think that the nature of Commander Legends is one of those things that buying sealed product. If you are looking to play Commander, I would buy it. There does seem to be kind of a surge in demand for this product, and as we can usually tell with these types of products, whenever Wizards makes these types of things for the first time when they come out, it is important to note that these products generally tend to do well because Wizards of the Coast, because Hasbro, they are motivated for these products to perform well. We saw this with Modern Horizons a year ago in 2019. Modern Horizons, that was their first real experiment, as it were, into creating a set that had, if you weren't around, Modern Horizons basically set, their goal was to completely bypass standard, make these cards that would go straight into their non-rotating formats, Modern, Legacy, Vintage, etc. We know what happened with Modern Horizons. A lot of the cards very, very, very heavily pushed. A lot of the cards have more or less permanently changed the face of some of these older formats. And a lot of these cards, during their initial period immediately after release, the set came out, I want to say, towards the beginning of June in 2019. Modern Horizon cards were among the hottest cards on the market. Anytime between July, probably through August, September, we saw a lot of cards just slowly keep climbing in value as people were starting to figure out ways to break these different cards. A lot of the cards did eventually, not a lot, but some of the cards eventually get banned. A lot of the prices have settled, but we have seen and continue to see a lot of these cards slowly creep up in value as people start to figure out ways where these cards can break. A lot of these cards do have applications outside of their respective formats because, again, Wizards does create such a wide spread of these cards. They really want something to be there to appeal to everyone. I think Commander Legends is going to largely follow the same pattern. They want to have a fairly wide spread of Commander cards to appeal to every type of Commander player. Because at the end of the day, that's really who is going to be buying this product. They have to be able to sell them, and they have to be able to sell this product pretty hard. So with Jeweled Lotus, looking at it, it's very clear that this is meant to be a more powered level card. This is probably for decks that can generally, while this card does seem like it would be an evergreen card, this is the type of card that realistically probably should go in every Commander deck. Understandably, there will be groups that will probably outright ban it. There are groups that don't want to play with it. There will probably be groups that would look to have people tone down their level of their Commander, especially decks that are centered around their Commander themselves, or decks that are able to use some sort of graveyard strategy to recur these. I do see a fair amount of talk where people have talked about ways where this card can very easily be abused, and that's not really a surprise. We know that fast mana is among the most degenerate things in Magic. Cards relating to fast mana have always been broken in one form or another. I wouldn't really suspect Jeweled Lotus to be different. The nature of this card, because it is more likely to be geared towards more competitive and high-level, high-powered EDH decks, I think that does change the dynamic a little bit. The fact that it's there, the fact that it is available is something to be aware of. It does create kind of a higher level, a higher threshold on what price for the Mythics should be. So having this type of card, having this unique original first printing of this card is something that, again, does follow Wizards' MO, where because it's the first time they've done this Commander Legends type product, they're going to push it. And I suspect that there are other cards that they have yet to spoil, probably some cards that they have spoiled as well. These cards are all going to be heavily pushed. And looking at the type of demographic that Commander players fall into, these cards, I think, all point in direction that Commander Legends will be a successful set for them. And this is something that they plan for. They expect it. They want to be successful. So a lot of these cards, they have to be powerful. If they're going to print them for the first time and they're going to be unique, they have to be powerful and they have to be pushed. So buying sealed product does seem like a winning endeavor. As for long-term holds, it's something that's a little bit hard to speak to. We do know what the release schedule looks like for 2021 going ahead. We have a pretty good idea of what types of product, what types of product will be coming out. We know that Modern Horizons 2 will be coming out. We know Time Spiral Remastered is coming out. So those are supplementary products. We don't know if there's more. We can only assume there will be more because Wizards seems to want to be printing product basically as fast as they can. We do expect to see some of these products released probably in the interim time between larger set releases. So we'll have to see how that goes. It will be difficult to see what a reprint for Commander Legends looks like. We know that it'll be about basically 2 years since we saw Modern Horizons 1 and Modern Horizons 2. Modern Horizons 1, as mentioned before, June 2019. Modern Horizons 2, we're probably looking in quarter 1, quarter 2, so anytime between March, April, May, June, that would probably put about in the roughly 2-year period. So Commander Legends, a little bit hard to tell when some of these cards will be reprinted. So if you're looking to buy sealed product, I think it's a reasonable buy. I think short term, there may be supply issues as well. This seems to be a relatively common trend among some of the more among retailers and distributors. Product has been heavily allocated, and this is something that there's going to be a fair amount of demand for. I think if you are able to buy it up, you may be able to capitalize on it, especially in the short term, especially in the upcoming months with going into a holiday. People may be desperate to buy it, especially if their local store is sold out, depending on how widely available this would be. And then it's possible that in 2021, if we start to have some sort of normalcy return to our daily lives, people will start feeling comfortable going out to events, going out and playing EDH in person. If we possibly see the return of Magic Fest, Command Fest, etc., it's very possible that some of these short printed products that we see this year, that we see in 2020, will have an uptick in demand in 2021. And if they were truly short printed and there was a short run and they're allocated and we don't see a huge surge in supply on them, look at Jumpstart. We could see these prices continue to trend upwards into next year, and that would be the opportunity to get out of them. As for singles themselves, a lot of them do seem fairly high. I think the nature of the spoiler season, that we have so many content creators, a lot of cards are coming in. A lot of people are intentionally building hype around these cards. I think a lot of these cards are designed to be hyped. Again, this is something that Wizards is in their MO. They want to make Commander Legends be as big of a success as possible, being their first time with this type of product. I think that a lot of the singles will be priced high to begin with, and we can slowly see where they start to settle. We do have to remember that Commander Legends is going to largely be, I believe, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that it is going to be roughly in the same price range as a normal booster box. Booster packs will be the same price. So just something to consider. There is an upper limit on how expensive some of these cards can be. We can't have all these cards be too valuable. We've discussed box EV before. If the singles are too valuable, all people will want to do is go out and open their boxes. Retailers will be more incentivized to open their boxes for singles and sell the singles as opposed to selling the boxes themselves. And as a result, we'll reach a price equilibrium slowly as supply starts to enter the market. The price on singles will slowly drop until it is no longer viable to be opening up singles from boxes. Some of their mythics, some of the cards that are spoiled that I just kind of want to go over. The green mythics, there's 2 of them. I don't really remember the name on them. One of them is, I want to say, like an 8 mana card, I think they're both 8 mana cards. I think they both cost 6 and 2 green. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. One of them is a vanilla creature, except it has Cascade 4 times on it. That is the type of big, splashy green mythic card that is very, very definitive and accurate to what EDH is, playing big cards that have variance that will do big, cool, flashy, unique things. That card basically sums it up perfectly. I think that is going to be an EDH card that will basically be played in green decks for a very, very long time. That was a card that will continue to sell. It is unlikely that there will be another card that does a similar effect in the future. You're certainly not going to see one be topped. Unless they somehow decide to print a bigger green vanilla creature that has 5 instances of Cascade or 6 instances of Cascade or something. It doesn't really seem like this card is a card that would be topped or redone in the future. Cascade, again, one of those mechanics that I think is very fundamental to EDH. It does create a lot of variance. It does kind of create a spin the wheel type situation that a lot of people do really seem to like. With Cascade, it is big, it's flashy, it's expensive. The other green mythic kind of falls in the same boat. I think it's 8 mana sorcery, search for 10 land cards and put them into play. Obviously, not really relevant as a green ramp spell, more of probably along the lines of a finisher. Very, very easy to do with things like Field of the Dead, create an army of zombies. That's probably on the lower end. People talk about mazes end. You can basically fetch up whatever mazes you're missing and basically create a win condition then and there. Lots of interesting things you can do with this card. Same idea with this card. This is one of those cards really over the top in terms of what it does. Not really going to see anything like it. I don't really see them creating a card that would be, fetch 20 lands or some ridiculous number. This is already towards the upper end of ridiculousness and over the top. As mentioned, that is really indicative of what EDH is, and I think these green mythics, both of these really embody that very well. Both of these fairly high pre-sale prices already. As mentioned, when we're talking about sell prices, pre-order prices, a lot of them very arbitrary, very made up. Wait until more people let them set up pre-order prices, let them list them on their websites, list them on TCG Player, and we'll see how they settle. It is likely that they will settle within the next week or so as we do kind of ramp up into the Commander set release. So I do expect that we'll see some more cards spoiled. I don't really see all of them being spoiled yet. We do know that there's a fair amount of reprints as well. Some of the more iconic Commander Legends that have exploded in price recently do have the reprint treatment. It seems like they're going to be in the premium foil. I can't remember exactly what the name on it. We did see a fair amount of them, so a lot of those will be fairly expensive as well. I think it is the type of card that you do want as your commander. You do want that really premium foil on it if you really want to make your commander stand out. So those are pretty neat. We do see a fair amount of them. It is important to note that if your commander is foil already, it is likely that your original foil will be safe. A lot of people seem to be getting a little panicked by this, but you do have to remember that liquidity does go down. We talked about this in previous episode, especially when talking premium products on some of these sets. A lot of these sets, as more and more product comes out, as more and more variations of the same cards exist, as these cards slowly get reprinted over time, each individual version loses liquidity because they're now competing with many other versions of that same card that already do exist. Just something to be aware. It is, again, as mentioned, unlikely that your original foil will lose value substantially, but when it does come time for you to sell, you do have to realize that it may be harder and harder to find buyers when some of these alternate art versions do exist, that the premium form could be cheaper. I mention this because we do see some of the other alternate art commons, uncommons are being spoiled. We have seen cards like Command Tower, Soul Ring, we discussed this already. Boros Charm, I believe, was one of the cards that was getting reprinted. Arcane Signet is getting reprinted. These are cards that do have alternate forms. We mentioned this. One of the types of cards they had mentioned as going in their boosters would be commons, uncommons that are staples to the EDH format. These cards would get reprinted, and they do have these alternate art forms. I suspect a lot of these cards won't have a substantial amount of value. A lot of them are relatively cheap to begin with. They make for good bulk pickups. You want to be picking these things out of bulk, but trying to find the premium versions and then really having them be as relatively commonplace as they are, because they do make an appearance in normal boosters, collector boosters, etc. It makes it really, really hard to have a large premium on them. As we mentioned, when we look at the upper end of cards, having more premium versions of cards makes it hard to sell each individual version of the cards. I think it's not really going to be any different for a lot of these smaller cards. Really, the best example we can look at is Cultivate from Core 2021. There is an alternate art version of Cultivate. I looked on TCG Player. There's 300 plus listings on it. 300 plus people selling this card, and you can buy it in the low $2 to $2.50 range. It's really not that valuable. Granted, that is a fairly substantial premium over the normal version. The normal version you could probably buy in the dollar range or so. There are F&M promos, are set foils, etc. There's just so many premium versions that it makes it really hard for this alternate art, full art border, what have you, really find its place in the market. And I suspect a lot of these cards will fall victim kind of in the same way. Are they cool? Should they have a small premium? Yes. I don't think the premium is going to be really anything that's substantial. We've already seen a lot of what collector boosters have done to the market. It's creating a very, very heavily saturated market where everyone is trying to open up these cards for some of the more premium cards. With Zendikar Rising, people are opening up for the box topper expeditions, and now we see how heavily depressed the prices are, even in the normal set, without looking at the expeditions themselves. When we look at basically everything that's not mythic, rares are basically worthless. A lot of the prices have been basically just pummeled into the ground simply because people are just opening up so many packs to get these cards, to get the premium versions, the masterpieces, expeditions cards, that even some of the mythics that do have the full art treatment, etc., they're basically the same price as the just normal vanilla pack version. So that's something to note regarding alternate art commons, uncommons. Are they going to have value? Yes, but you will have a hard time selling them. There's already a lot of competition for them. Boros Charm, I think we're on 5 printings of Boros Charm, 5 or 6 printings of Boros Charm now. Right? Who knows how many printings of Sol Ring, Command Tower, etc. So these I would generally steer away from. I don't think they make for good specs. I don't think they make for good buys. I think a fair amount of people may actually just prefer a vanilla version of the card. They may just prefer a normal card without the extended art, etc., especially if it's going to cost them less. I know there's a fair amount of commanders out there who look to build many, many decks, and to them, at the end of the day, all they want is to get the cheapest possible version of a card, because when you have to buy a same card, when you have to buy it for 10 different decks, when you're trying to buy Sol Ring for 10 different decks, the price starts to add up, and it doesn't really make sense for these premium versions to exist. I think Commander, generally, you want to be churning through cards as quickly as possible for retailers, for people who do look to buy and sell. I would not be holding on to any of these printings, so I think that steering clear of these full art versions may be something that would be advantageous. I think that this really applies to all levels. It doesn't matter if it's a common. We talked about Cultivate, Sol Ring, Command Tower, even the common versions, most basic versions, all the way up to the rares, mythics that do have the premium version on top, because now you start running into issues where, again, as mentioned, when you start bumping into other versions and it becomes hard to sell. I generally steer clear of these. That would really be my advice. I don't really think there's a place for them. For the specs that I do think are worth buying into, I think the ones that you can go super deep on that are really, really interesting to me are probably the penny stock versions of a lot of these cards. What you're looking for are cards that are going to be printed for the first time. So cards that are unique to Commander Legends, the brand new cards. Again, because we don't know what a remake / reprint for Commander Legends look like. Are they going to make a Commander Masters? Is that something that's on the line? We don't know. We have an idea of what's going to be released next year. We have kind of a rough schedule for them. They released a full year of the full year schedule for product that is coming out. Again, we don't know what that actually looks like. We don't know if there's going to be more. We have an idea of the sets that are coming out, but with Wizards of the Coast, there's no real predicting what they're going to do. They could very well be printing more and more sets. And with those sets, there is, again, that level of uncertainty. We don't know for sure. So I think until we know what a reprint on Commander Legends looks like, do they just incorporate these cards into Commander 2021? We don't know, because if we don't know what the market looks like, then they don't know either. It's possible there is already another Commander Legends in the work, right? Commander Legends 2, maybe down the line. But if we look at past patterns, if we look at Modern Horizons, we very easily could be looking at 2 years away before we do see it. It could be 2022 before we see Commander Legends 2 or a similar product, depending on how well it does. So, things I would buy, things that I think are good buys right away, are going to be cards that first time printing, that are unique in what they do. That is the nature of Commander. Those are cards that sell in Commander. When people don't have an option, don't have the ability to replace that card with another substitute, with an alternative, then people will be forced to buy that card. Those cards are likely the cards that rise the most quickly in prices, and those are cards that will probably do the best going into 2021. An example, Arcane Signet. Are there other mana rocks? Absolutely, but up until these cards were available outside Brawl decks, until they were easily obtainable, Arcane Signet was probably one of the most expensive cards, simply because it was the best mana rock, and there wasn't really acceptable substitutes, because all the substitutes were simply worse than Arcane Signet. So the cards you want to be specking on, first time printings, and cards are hard to reprint. So a card that is, if we want to use, for example, the Cascade creature, is that something that could be theoretically reprinted in a Modern Horizons-ish set? Absolutely. It is a vanilla creature that has Cascade on it. Is it kind of goofy? Is it something that would likely be reprinted in those sets? Not really. It's unlikely to be reprinted, but there's nothing on that card that makes it unique to a Commander product. Multiple instances of Cascade. We've seen cards that have multiple instances of Cascade on them. There are cards that have only Cascade in their text box. They don't do anything else other than Cascade. We have seen this before. So that type of card is, in theory, something that could easily be reprinted in a double Masters type set or an Ultimate Masters type set. Any sort of Masters type set, that is something that could easily be reprinted in. If you have a card that has Partner on it, Partner is basically only a Commander mechanic. That's something that is unique to Commander. It'd be really, really strange if you opened up a double Masters pack and you had cards with Partner on it. So that is a type of card that, in my mind, hard to reprint, and that is the type of card that I would be looking to buy here. There's no guarantees in this. It is very possible, as I mentioned, that there is another Commander Legends in the works already. There could be cards in here that are already printed that are going to be reprinted in Commander 2021 in pre-con decks. It's hard to say, but these are cards that I like to take a stab on. As mentioned before, penny stocks. This is Magic's equivalent to penny stocks. Penny stocks, if you don't know, are kind of self-explanatory. Penny stocks, I think by definition is a company where the value of their stock is worth less than $1. And it's very, very easy to get into. It's very easy to get in early on and buy a lot of the stock. If a stock is 50 cents, for example, buying buy 200 of these stocks is going to cost you $100. It's not a lot. That's not a big investment. That's something that you can easily throw down. With Magic, same idea. The stocks I do like the best, hard to reprint cards, first time printing, and cheap. So lots of uncommon commanders that have partner, that do relatively unique things, first time printing on them, and kind of hard to reprint, again, because they have partner or some mechanic that is largely unique to commander. So it makes them hard to reprint, and because they're uncommon, it is unlikely that Wizards would have their mind on them and think that this is a card that we're going to put in future Commander product already, because future Commander product that does come out, is likely made many months in advance. It's possible that if a Commander product was going to be in the works for November of 2021, in 1 year from now, it's likely a big part of the set has already been finalized, and they're probably on the way to getting that set printed relatively soon for distribution. So even if they were to react, even if they were to start to try to reprint these sets, it may be probably close to 2 years from now, possibly, before anything that does well in Commander Legends and needs a reprint is going to actually be able to make it to reprinting. Just something to keep in mind. So a lot of the stocks, a lot of things I would be looking for, again, penny stocks idea, cheap, first time printing, hard to reprint. There's a fair amount of them. I think one of them that to me kind of interesting is the Commander. It's a legendary creature. It's I think it's a black cat. I remember looking at it on the art. It has partner, and it says Commander creatures you control have menace and death touch. Is that necessarily something that's super exciting? No, but if you partner with a commander that is going to be centered around having doing commander damage for the win, this is something that's very easily abusable. That is the type of card that I would be looking for. Foils, some of these cards also do very well because first time printing, we don't know if there's going to be a foil in the future. We don't know what the foil in the future looks like. Good opportunity to be buying in on these cards. Some of these uncommons, some of these uncommon commanders, very possible that you can buy them. You can snag them on TCG Player first weekend when people are listing hundreds of copies. You could very easily be buying some of these cards for sub 20 cents, 30 cents, depending on the card. Very easy to spend $1,000, buy 1,000 copies, 500 copies, and just stick them in a box and forget about them and see if any of these pop. That's what I'd be looking for in Commander Legends. We'll be talking about some more of them, I'm sure. I don't think the full set will be fully spoiled until next week. So I think we'll kind of revisit, we'll kind of look at some of the ones I may target, and we'll talk about them in the future. We've kind of spent enough time on Commander Legends. That's really kind of my preliminary thoughts. Again, we'll revisit Commander Legends in the future. We'll talk more about it. I'm sure that there will be more new things to come out as more of the sets get spoiled. So we'll revisit, kind of reanalyze prices, and see what we want to jump in on. Moving on, looking at my mail, I did get a fair amount of interesting things over the weekend and today. Some of these I just want to talk about very briefly. As a retailer, it is important that if people come to your store and want to sell you things, that you have the knowledge, you have the means to be able to buy them and sell them profitably. For most people out there who do listen to this, looking at ways to make your hobby cheaper, looking at things that you do want to buy, maybe you're looking for a way to supplement your income, having knowledge on what you can go out there and what you can spend money on and be able to sell profitably is going to be something that will benefit you in the long run. So first, we'll start off. This is just one, but this is these are Yeezys 350 boost. This is the I think this is natural. This was a drop that came out a week ago. This just came in for me on, I want to say Saturday. I think it was yesterday, possibly. So these came in. I'm not a sneakerhead. I don't have a ton of sneakers, but I do buy the ones that I like. I do sell off extras. I generally buy extra copies of the ones I think will be good. Good is, again, very subjective. It's hard to tell what they look like, and kind of hard to predict what will do well, what won't. It's not really any different than other market that requires speculation. But I do generally try and keep some of the pairs I like for myself. For those, buying extra pairs and selling them off usually will cover the pair I want to keep for myself. So the pair I keep for myself ends up being free, so I'm okay to sell off extra copies. I'm not as deep into the sneaker market as a lot of other people are. I know that the sneaker market is one of those markets that has become very, very heavily saturated. There's been a lot of people who have tried to get in over time, and the market has gone substantially worse than it has in the past. Again, simple virtue, so many people trying to get in, but with a lot of these limited drops, Yeezy's not really different. Nike does a lot of the same thing. We know, for those who've been following Magic, the K-Swiss J sneakers, very, very limited run. If you had bought those, you can easily sell them for, I want to say, I see a lot of eBay sales closing in the $600 range on those. Sneakers are kind of unique because they're unique from things like Magic and other collectibles. So sneakers have utility. People buy shoes because simply because they look cool, because people like them, because at the end of the day they need to have some level of functionality. It is a level of expression for a lot of people. So sneakers are one of those things that people have started to spend more and more money on. The fact that at the end of the day everyone does need a pair of sneakers when you're going out. So most people usually have a few pairs that they rotate between. I think I usually rotate between 3 or 4 pairs. There is a very, very good market for that. It is a little difficult to get in with sneakers. Trying to find buyers is a little bit difficult. You can use StockX. If you've never seen it before, StockX is simply another seller platform, not really different than TCG Player, etc. With StockX, the process is a little bit more simple. They're basically bids for people to buy, and then you can usually, if you're happy with the price, you can click and just sell it instantly. You don't need to set up a seller store. You don't need to have your own store like TCG Player. If you see someone's and they're as myself as a consumer, if I go on there and I say I'm willing to pay $250 on this pair, and someone sees that and they see that I'm happy to get $250 for my pair, they can immediately click on it and then just sell it to me, and they ship it to me. There are fees, not really different than TCG Player, but with sneakers, it is a little bit more difficult. For someone who is looking to get in, if you are looking to get in, not really my area of expertise. I generally buy a small spread on sizes. The more extreme on the sizes, people with large feet, people with small feet, are generally more valuable. But it is balanced by the fact that, one, it is going to be hard for you to find a buyer. Most people fall within a relatively 1 to 2 standard deviations of mean shoe size. That's why shoes are produced in that manner. We have a lot of people that have probably, if you're men's, probably 8, 9, 10, 11 size feet. Anything beyond much larger or smaller than that, it's going to be a little bit harder. So I generally buy sizes just kind of towards the middle. It does make it a little bit easier to get the sale as opposed to having to wait to find a buyer. But that is something that's there. Again, because I don't really look to fight. I'm not really looking to fight with people who are already in the shoe business. There are a lot of people that do very well with this. I know that in Portland, there are stores that they only sell sneakers, and they only sell high-end sneakers. We're not talking your kind of standard, Foot Locker type store that sells just run-of-the-mill sneakers. The ones in Portland, I know, they generally, one of them is marketed as a sneaker consignment store. They sell, most of their sneakers are probably $200 minimum and only going up from there. Lots of rare limited edition sneakers, sneakers where you had to get them at the drop, otherwise you couldn't get them. A lot of those types of things, the case of J sneakers, are examples of sneakers that would be inside the store. It is something that is growing. It is something that people have done very well with. I know quite a few people who have done very well with sneakers. It's not for me. I just look at it as one of those things where if I can flip the sneakers that I don't want, the extra copies, and it pays for mine, I'm more than happy with that. On a slightly more personal note, it is important that buying a good pair of sneakers is something that has changed my life. I've always been kind of the person in the past where I was happy buying your $100 pair of sneakers and just wearing them until they basically wore out. Buying nice sneakers actually has helped in the past, flying a lot, when you're on a plane, when you're standing a lot of time, when you're walking around a lot, having a good pair of sneakers is going to be something that is beneficial. Sneakers are unlikely to be something that I will skimp on in the future in terms of price. Comfort is something that I do value highly. So if you're one of those people, if your job does require you to stand, you do have to walk around a lot, I really, really, really do encourage you to invest in a good pair of sneakers. That is something that is going to be well worth it for you. Moving on, something else I got in the mail. These, if you can see them, these are WoW TCG loot cards. I bought them from someone who does sell online. WoW TCG loot cards are, for those who don't know, World of Warcraft. They made a trading card game, kind of in the early days. It was made by a company, Cryptozoic. At some point, they lost the licensing rights, and this was really kind of Blizzard's transition from a physical paper version of a TCG into what we would now know as Hearthstone. So these are kind of relics from it. So one of the absolute coolest thing I like about these, I'm actually a big Blizzard fan. I do play World of Warcraft. That is one of my pastimes. That these World of Warcraft cards are, if you look carefully, let me turn on my light here. I'm not sure why my light is off. So if you look inside the box here, so there is a gold strip right here. This functions very much like a scratch-off lottery ticket. If you scratch off this gold foil here, there's actually a code underneath that you can go onto World of Warcraft and enter into the game, and it does provide you with some unique in-game feature, like a mount, a toy, a pet, etc. So these generally sell very well, even though the game is no longer produced. It's a dead game now. These cards still sell very well because people continue to buy these. People do buy and sell these to get these loot cards. So these have done very well, and the nature of them is that once you scratch this off and you redeem the code, the card basically becomes worthless. So these cards, with them being sealed like this, unscratched, there's quite a bit of value on them. A lot of people aren't really aware of them. If you do find collections that have these, usually, I think the game was made, I want to say, from probably 2008 to about 2013 or so. You will sometimes find these. Look them up, because there's very definitely a market for them. People do pay on these, and trying to find them unscratched is getting more and more difficult. Again, because once people use them, you can't really redeem them again. So in terms of play, I've played the game very briefly in the past. I don't play it a lot, so I don't really know how good these cards are in the game itself. But all the novelty is inside these loot cards, and that is one of those things that people will continue to buy and sell. So very easy to make money on these. If you do buy collections and you do come across these, don't throw them out. These are definitely not bulk. These do have value, and buying them is worth your while. Just knowing about them is also worth your while. It's unlikely that you'll walk into a game store and you'll see them, unless the game store is emptying out old stock or whatever. But for the most part, you don't really see these cards anymore. But when you're buying collections from people, sometimes you do come across these. Lastly, another thing that did come in the mail for me as well that I do want to share is this. This, in case you can't see, hold it a little bit closer to the camera. I don't know how well it can be read. This is fine silver. This is 0.999 fine silver. This is 10 troy ounces of it. So it comes in kind of I can't really take out the sleeve here. So it comes in basically kind of a flat brick. This is silver bullion. I have been buying silver more and more. Silver is one of those things that is a hedge against inflation. When there's a lot of money, people start to buy silver. People start to buy precious metals. Not really different than any asset, anything that you add to your portfolio, because silver is one of those things, as mentioned, hedge against inflation. We know that kind of shift away from what I'm getting in the mail here. It's just a brick. It's just a bar of silver. There's nothing too much more to see beyond that. When we look at real world economics, silver is one of those things traditionally used as a hedge against inflation. Inflation, we've talked about before. We know that with stimulus checks that came out earlier this year, $290 billion was basically printed. and given out. That's a lot of money to be added to the economy, and inflation is something that is going to come in line. It is something that is going to catch up. Silver is one of the ways that people buy silver to hedge against it. I know that there's a lot of people out there who stack silver quite a bit. If we look historically, if we are preparing for a recession, which is possible, I'm not saying it's coming, I'm not saying it's not coming, it's possible. If you look at the most recent one, 2008, following the housing market bubble, 2008, in the years that followed, 2009, 2010, we actually saw silver reach record level highs. It has regressed a little bit since then, but silver performed its best during that time. I think that at this point, I'm more than happy to buy it. I'm more than happy to stick in a safe and sit on it and just wait. And at some point, when it does rebound, I'll be more than happy to cash out. Silver was at a low earlier this year. The prices have gone up a little bit, so it is becoming a little bit worse. But I do think that if we just look at the market, it is something that is something to consider if you do buy silver. If you have a way of getting silver, it's not a terrible thing to hold on to. It's simply another asset inside the portfolio that really helps diversify, something to kind of go away from your traditional stocks, bonds, collectibles, what have you. Just something to consider. That being said, something that is important to remember when it comes to investing, and this really goes to everything, not just silver, not just collectibles, not just stocks. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This is something that is worth reiterating. Just because it has done well in the past is not something that you can guarantee in the future. There's some risks associated with investing as a result in anything. It doesn't matter. Take that into account before you go out. Using past data is one of the strongest tools we have at our disposal. Knowing how prices trend, whether they're trending up or down. These are all things that we do want to take into account. But one of the traps that I fell into, again, that people fall into, I fall into as well. Do not use your past results as a guarantee for the future. It is very possible that we could have a recession, but silver doesn't really do anything. It just kind of flatlines. It just stays there. That is possible. I'm not necessarily using. I can't say that there's guarantee, but there's an upper limit to how useful the data is. But with that data, with what I have, I'm happy to buy silver and wait. And if it does pop in the future, that's when I'll get out. But I know that just because it happened before, not necessarily something that's going to happen again. November 2nd, we know tomorrow, November 3rd, tomorrow is election day. Regardless of where you stand on politics, regardless of your feelings, I'm not really going to turn into a political debate. It is important to note that the stock market does change very, very rapidly and is directly affected by what happens as a result of election. If you look at an article, there's actually an article on Forbes magazine on August 18th of this year, so about a little more than 2 months ago. The article is titled, "Here's How the Stock Market Has Performed Before, During, and After Presidential Elections." And this is absolutely something that you do want to take note of, because this is something that will likely affect us in the coming months. No matter what the outcome of tomorrow's election is, it is something that we will need to be aware of. Right now, volatility is very, very high. We know that markets are very, very volatile right now. The collectibles market, not really different. What we do, not really different. But as the year starts to wind down, again, regardless of what happens tomorrow, there is a lot of volatility, there's a lot of uncertainty. A lot of people are facing difficult times right now. That is kind of the reality of where we are everywhere in the world. We know that in Europe, a lot of places have started to lock down again. It's possible the US may follow suit depending on how the pandemic progresses. We know that over the weekend we did see some record-setting number of cases over the weekend. So that's something that we do have to consider. And then we do have to consider that there may very well be a second round of stimulus checks. These are all things that are simply examples of the real world, what's happening around us, politics and economics regarding the pandemic, regarding public health, etc. These things will affect the economy. At the end of the day, that affects the market, that affects what we do, that affects our spending habits. So being able to insulate yourself, being able to protect yourself, being ready for any possible outcome is something that is absolutely invaluable right now. I think that if we retrace to what happens at the beginning of the year, kind of in March, April, towards the beginning of this pandemic, when it was really in its infancy, when it really started to pick up in the US, in Europe, and lockdowns did happen. What did we originally see? People started selling off their collections, people started selling off their collectibles, people were selling them in anticipation of no paper events, these things happening. For a while, if you were buying during that time, you were buying cards very, very cheaply as people were concerned that they lost their job, they need money. This always happens towards the end of the year as well. As the holiday seasons start to approach, if people are short on money, usually the first thing that goes are collectibles. They're expendable. Usually people realize that this is a quick way for me to sell these into money. A lot of people have a fair amount of money locked up inside collectibles. For the most part, if you're a Magic player, if you're a Pokemon collector, etc., your collection is likely to be worth hundreds, thousands of dollars. Not that many people out there really have a small collection, I want to say. Even small collections do tend to be several $100s. Generally, one of the first things that people do cash out on. If you're out there and you have the money and you have the spending power to go out and buy, November is probably among the best times to do so. As people start to sell them off, usually you can find a lot of great deals. People do need spending money, and usually those people are, again, more than happy to sell if you have the ability to do so. Buy. If we combine the fact that if we do go into lockdown again, we do expect people to lose their jobs, unemployment does take another spike. Same idea. People are going to need to sell off their assets. If you have money, if you're able to position to buying, you'll probably find a lot of great deals, lots of good opportunities to buy. If you do see another second round of stimulus checks, though, that's when things get interesting, because we know that following what happened in March and April, stimulus checks was really the beginning of collectibles, of our hobbies, basically just completely skyrocketing. People were spending money, people were going out and buying things that, again, not to get political, I'm not trying to say what they should and shouldn't spend their money on, but we did see record number level of sales. A lot of things that did start to spiked around the stimulus check time. If you look at retail, a lot of places were selling record levels of electronics, of consumer electronics, game systems, computers, etc. People are needing ways to keep themselves occupied during a lockdown, and this is the beginning of winter. If people are going to be locked down, there's a possibility that we are going to be cooped up inside for an extended period as we ride out this pandemic, it is possible that we do see another surge in prices for collectibles. If another round of stimulus checks come, that's something that we should expect. And if you are in position to buy before that happened, then waiting for a stimulus check to hit and being able to cash out is going to be very, very profitable for a lot of people. That is something to consider. Being able to tie all this together is really important. I think, as mentioned before, if you are in a position, if you have the money, if you have the spending power, and you're able to buy collections, you are able to buy things going in, I think this is a very, very good time to do so. I've repeated this several times on the show before. Warren Buffett, you should be buying when people are selling, and you should be selling when people are buying. Right now, a lot of people seem to want to be selling. It's really starting to gear up. A lot of the prices have started to cool off, especially in Pokemon, now that so many have hit the market. That doesn't really deter me. I think that just means that as prices start to come down, it is a better time than ever to be buying. Magic, I haven't been as bullish on Magic as I have been in the past. I think that I do want to be selling. I think that a lot of people with Commander, if people are going to start buying into Commander, people are looking at ways to kind of get their decks ramped up for the new cards, with addition new cards, with cards that are changing. I think being able to sell into that is something I'm looking to do right now. But with Pokemon, I think buying is probably one of the best ways I can spend my money now. Again, all this is kind of ramping up in anticipation of the 25th anniversary of Pokemon. That's something we talked about. That's happening next year. And I think that would be, when that really ramps up, that would be my opportunity to really cash out on Pokemon and make the best, on a lot of my returns. Especially with a lot of things, I feel like I've been working at this forever, but I'm still trying to get an order off to PSA, CGC, BGS, what have you. A lot of cards are just kind of scattered everywhere, but there is a growing stack of cards I do need to send off. And I'm happy with a long wait time. I'm in no rush to get them back. I'm not one of those people that opens up something valuable and then think I need to send it in as quickly as possible to sell and get my money back right away. I'm happy to send in these cards and wait 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. I'm willing to be patient because a lot of these cards I don't plan on selling off for quite some time anyways. So right now, spending power, this is something that you should look at. Figure out how you can spend your money. If you're looking to invest, there may not be a better time to do so, as people, as mentioned, are looking to sell off, especially some people who just want some quick flips. I think there's a lot of good opportunities to buy. Vivid Voltage is a set that's coming out relatively soon. This is something that we'll talk about probably a little bit closer to release date, but people have started already to sell those because we did kind of see the pre-release events happen relatively recently. So people have been selling off their singles. But if you're looking to buy, I don't think that there's a better time to buy than now. If you are following up on the news and following up with what happens tomorrow, whatever the outcome is, we do have to understand that volatility is something that is the reality. It is something that is present in kind of our everyday lives right now. So none of this is certain. I already said this. It's worth repeating. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. We can make the best with the data we have. That is the nature of good investing. That is how you are a smart investor. That is how you buy profitably. That is how you make money long run. But there's no guarantee in any of this. It's unlikely that Pokemon will go belly up tomorrow. It's unlikely that Magic will go belly up tomorrow. But there are certain things you have to do. Keeping track of the news, watch what is going on, is going to be something that will be beneficial to you. Before, I've said this many times, having this basic understanding of economics, of what's happening in other markets and other economies around the world, is going to help you make your decisions when it comes to investing. It doesn't matter what level you want to invest. You don't necessarily need a lot of money to invest. I did mention at the very beginning, some of the best things I think you can do with Commander Legends is look at some of the penny stocks, some of the cheap cards, first time printing, hard to reprint, that you can buy and just throw in a box and forget. There's a lot of options. You just have to be smart, and you just have to be willing to accept that it's possible that your investment doesn't pan out, and sometimes that you'll just lose money on it. That is the reality of the situation. That is the reality of collectibles. So we just have to kind of take it all in stride, take it all in account. I could just say that I think right now, having good spending power, being able to spend money, buying collections, buying things, buying investment pieces as the holidays start to roll around. This is, I want to say, probably November 1st is what I do consider to be the beginning of the holidays. People are really starting to ramp up. Because we're a few weeks out from American Thanksgiving, and then after that, Christmas, people really do start to consider, I need money. If I'm going to visit my family somewhere, if I need to spend money traveling to visit my family, if I need to start buying gifts, all these things start coming together. If I need money for Black Friday, people do look to sell. You want to be there to seize an opportunity and be able to buy. That is something that has happened year in and year out. Like clockwork, around the holidays, people start to sell off. And these are things that, as much as I repeat them, are absolutely worth repeating and absolutely worth taking note of, especially if this is something that you do want to pursue in the relatively near future. With that, that'll be more or less a wrap on today's episode. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Edwin13. You can find the social media sites for Vermilion on the right. Wherever you are in the world, stay safe. As always, thank you for listening, and we'll be back tomorrow with more. Thanks again.